We're going to be dealing with 3 parts over the next 3 weeks. Tonight, we're going to be dealing with singleness. Next week, we're going to be dealing with dating. And then the following week, we're going to be dealing with relationships, marriage, and so on. And the reason why I wanted Paulette on tonight is because I don't feel too qualified to have a one-on-one conversation with you about singleness, because I'm not single. And as you know, I was married at a very, very young age. So I don't know much about that. So yeah, so I wanted to kind of like get an understanding from Paulette. What we're going to do, we're going to set a precedent. I'm going to give you a couple of scriptures, and then we're going to see where the conversation takes us. All right. Okay. So there's a number of scriptures relating to singleness. Jesus in Matthew chapter 19, verse 11 to 12, he said, "All cannot accept this saying, but only those to whom it is given. For there are eunuchs who were born thus from their mother's womb, and there are eunuchs are also single people who have committed their lives to God, who were made eunuchs by men, and there are eunuchs who have made themselves eunuchs for the kingdom's sake, or the kingdom of heaven's sake. Who is able to accept it, let him accept it." Paul then carries on the conversation in 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 7. 1 Corinthians 7, verse 7 to 9, okay? He carries on the conversation, and he says, "I wish that all men were even as I myself was, single, but each one to his own has got a gift from God, one in this manner and another in that. But I say to the unmarried and to the widows, it is good for them if they remain as I am. But if they cannot exercise self-control, let them marry. For it is better for them to marry than to burn with passion." All right. The conversation continues. All right. In 1 Corinthians 7, verse 32 to 34, where you can write them down. You can look at them in your own time. 1 Corinthians 7, 32 to 34. It says, "But I want you to be without care. Who is unmarried cares for the things of the Lord." Those that are single, they care for the things of the Lord. They're able to give a greater admonition, greater concentration to the things of the Lord, how he might please the Lord. But he who is married cares about the things of the world, and how he may please his wife, or how she may please her husband. There is a difference between a wife and a virgin. The unmarried woman cares for the things of the Lord, that she be holy both in body and in spirit. But she who is married cares for the things of the world, how she might please her husband. And then there's many other things like Corinthians, 1 Corinthians 6:18 talks about fleeing sexual immorality. Every sin that a man does is outside the body, but he who commits sexual immorality sins against his own body, and so on. So there's a lot to say about singleness. So how are we going to kick off this talk tonight? All right. So I'm going to kick off by saying this. There are many people that are looking for a long-term relationship, a lifelong relationship. There are lots of people, on the other hand, looking to get out of a lifelong relationship.
I was going to mention that. I was like,
all right. They're like, man, I'm going to put in my skates. I'm out of there. All right. And I know a lot of them. And then there are people who are just happy to remain single. Let's start there, Paulette. Let's start there. I mean, yeah.
Okay, so there's always discussions around relationships. And as human beings, we know, looking at Genesis, that it was God's will for Adam and Eve to be together, and for Adam and Eve, they were the first married couple in the garden. Okay, so God's original plan was that relationship as a man and a wife is something that he blesses, and something that he was necessary to kick off humanity. So we know that. And this text that you've shared about being single, and we talked about, you brushed on the eunuch, as in like a call. So there was eunuchs that are men that are made eunuchs. So we know, if you check out history, you'll look at the Egyptians, and then when the pharaohs had men in charge of their harems, which is where all those vestal virgins were, because they felt that they could have more than one at the time, that they were protected by eunuchs. So basically, these men could not perform in any way in terms of sexual desires, and therefore they were the right kind of men to take charge and to look after these women. So you've got a call to singleness, and like, a man-made, and we bring that into today's living. So there are choices. So you've got two types of singleness. You've got people and I've got friends that categorically do not want to be married. And sometimes when you're young, it's like, yeah, I don't want to be, I'm young, I want to get out there in life, don't want to be married. And you think, well, I'll check in with you in like a year's time and see, or 2 years time, to see whether you change your mind. And for some people, it's vehement. They want to be single, they have no interest in being married, and they're happy with that. Okay, so it's a choice that they make, they're happy being that. And also for some of those people, most of the time, they're called to it, which means that they're not at home thinking, oh, I'm saying that I'm single, but really I hate being single. Do you know what I mean? So they're actually happy and enjoying their life being single. Okay. And then you've got the other type. You've got people that are single by circumstance. So they want to be married. Yeah. They, they see in their future marriage, but their current situation, means that they haven't found that person yet. Okay. And sometimes people feel that you can only be in those two camps and be single and it be a burden. But the reality is that if you're single, you've got options. You mentioned that if you check married people, that they've been married for years, some people want to be single that are married, and that you have the other hand of single people desperately wanting to be married. And I always say, have a conversation with married people. When you're single, talk to married people. Because your judgment or the way you look at things may well be coloured by what you think being married is all about. So being married about meeting your expectations. You want a man who is this, that, and the other. But the reality is that you have to meet someone's expectations too.
Right.
Not just about you having someone meet all your expectations. You have to be that person for somebody else.
That's good.
So, so it's always good to be around people or someone that you want to be like. So when you have aspirations, if you're looking to see what a good marriage looks like, you hang around people that have good marriages.
Yeah.
We're not saying perfect, because you can have a good marriage, and in that marriage, historically there've been infidelity, but they've worked through it, and now their marriage is strong and they have a great marriage. So marriage is not perfect. But marriage, if it's founded on God and you've gone through stuff, you've experienced life together in a way that makes you stronger, then it's worth checking out that person, that couple, and talking to them about what it means to be married. But what I want to sort of like talk about today is the opportunity of being single, because people don't see it as an opportunity. See singleness as an opportunity. The text talks about when Paul says, I wish that you were all single like myself. Now we're talking
Right.
about the apostle. We're talking about someone who, and I'm sure had his opportunity to be married, even post, pre coming to God, and even after coming to God. Generally speaking, there are more women to men ratio. So I'm sure he must have had, a good opportunity to be married at one time. But he chose single because his point of view was, I can do more for God if I'm single. I can do more. My focus is, and my time and my opportunities, I can do more for God. But he says, if you can't handle that, because not everybody can handle being single. And he talks about the fact that, he puts it quite, in some ways, he puts it quite crudely. He said, you either marry or burn in your lust. And I remember as a child, we used to laugh about that.
I think we still
We're like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
As you grow up, you realize, you understand those issues, you understand what it means, that if you cannot bear to be alone, and even that statement alone is wrong, because you should be able to, your walk with God teaches you about who you are, and your development and who you need to be, so that you are content and happy about who you are as a person.
Yeah.
Do you remember? I remember a film that what's the guy from Mission Impossible? What's his name?
Tom Cruise.
Tom Cruise was in.
Yeah.
And he said to this woman in the lift, you complete me. I can't remember the name of the movie. It's an old movie. And people used to, go around saying, you complete me, and the reality is that you should, that one person should not have that level of power to complete. You should be able to be complete outside of another person.
That's incredible.
Somebody should not complete you, because it means that you will always be in deficit to somebody else. You will always need somebody else to complete you when you need to be complete by yourself. When you are single, you are fact-finding about yourself all the time, and you can only, depending on how old you are, you think of yourself at 18 and then think of yourself at 25. You know that you've changed as a person.
Yeah.
There are things that you would, at 18, 19, that was what you want to do. Come 25, you're a completely different person. And that is a combination of experiences, good and bad. That's a combination of getting to know who you are as a person. That's a combination of experiencing life in a way that can actually form you as a person, as a personality. So we're changing all the time. And so you have to have a good understanding of who you are to be able to articulate to somebody who you are and what you're looking for.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think so. My main thing is that you need to know yourself. You need to know who you are, and you need to know who you are in Christ. First of all, that's the most important thing. You have to have a walk with God that is solid. You have to have a walk with God that you know whose you are, and you know what God's requirement and what God's best is for you. Otherwise, you'll settle for anything.
Yeah.
So if you have issues about self-esteem, if you have issues about neglect, that you've been neglected, or you have low self-esteem issues, the first guy that comes along that pays you a lot of attention, you're going to think he's the one, because he's going to cater to the deficit in your life. And you're going to think, because he can do that he is the person for you. And you're going to keep, it's like an addiction. You're going to always want that topping up, want that reassurance, always want that from somebody else. Whereas when you find out, you make that journey about who you are, you, like David said, there are times in David's life, he was the king, he was in charge of, they say 2 million people in terms of the children of Israel. And there are times in Psalms where David was so low. You know, he had a queen, he had children, he was so low, but then he encouraged himself. He had to talk to himself and remind himself of who he was, what God had done for him. He was depressed, and he had to use the word of God to fix himself, basically. So my thing is that you have to have a good sense of who you are. You have to have your relationship rooted in God, because you need the Spirit of God to be able to lead and direct you when it comes to the minefield of relationships when you're ready for that. Yeah. And I say minefield only because if you don't know yourself, there will be a lot of minefields you'll be stepping on and you know, preferably blowing up because you don't know how to navigate that particular area of your life. All right.
So the first thing, what you're saying, Paula, the first thing that we really need to be sure in is our relationship with our God, because it's our relationship with God that determines how we move forward in terms of finding a partner, or how our perspective or our attitude in engaging with a prospective partner. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I'm saying that if your foundation is good with God, then it covers all types of relationship. So, you know, so we're talking about having a relationship with God that says that if you were to embark on something, you are saying, God, you know, the Bible says, in all thy ways acknowledge him and he shall direct your path. And it's really funny because sometimes what we say to God is, Lord, all our ways that we're acknowledging him is in our work, in our finances, in a project, you know. But when it comes to relationship, we're like, oh, I've got this. Don't worry, Lord, I've got this. You know, and when really what we need to be saying is that, Lord, there is nothing that I can't have you a part of, because I need your wisdom and I need you to direct this, and I need to know if you're in this. You know? And I've learned through experience. You know, I've learned through experience. I've learned that, you know, when you don't ask God to lead, you end up making compromises that God didn't have for you. Get yourself into situations where you know it's not God, but because you're driven by a need to be with someone, or driven by desperation, the worst driver, you know, because you feel that there's no other chance. And that's from the devil, because, you know, no one can make a good decision out of desperation.
Yeah.
No one ever makes good decisions out of desperation. You have got to be, it is good to take your time. It is good to check in with God. And if your relationship with God is that you acknowledge him in everything, you're always going to go back to God and say, Lord, you know, is this right? Is this the right person for me? You know, you're always going to check in with him because you know that you want him to direct your path. So it doesn't mean that you're getting super spiritual. It means that you cannot take the risk, because marriage is a hard thing, even when you do find the right person.
Yeah.
Even when it's yes all the way to the church, you know, life happens.
Yeah.
Circumstances come, you know, children come, you know, financial difficulties come, the death of a child comes, serious things come into relationship that can break people. Unless you have God, which is a main thing, both of you, and also that you are on the same page as people, and that you're working with your in your relationship, the best relationships have been broken. So you can't go into wanting to be married and not know the cost of it. You know, so, you know, with anything that we look at, you know, we just sometimes want the frills of it. We want the, you know, the good bits of it. But, you know, if you're looking to invest anything, you always look at all the elements of that investment. You look at, you know, what can happen if you lose that investment. How much are you prepared to lose, in terms, if we're talking about it being financial, or, you know, or you're going into business, you would look at all the options. And so you do exactly the same when it comes to a relationship. You look at, you know, is this the right person? You seek counsel. So when I was growing up, sadly, and I say sadly because it's old school, old church, and sometimes, and back then, I don't know about some of you guys, but back then, some of the Black Pentecostal churches, and I'm not knocking them for other things, I possibly could, but no, I'm not knocking them because when it came to relationship, they didn't put a priority. They didn't put that
right.
They didn't prioritize people in terms of the relationship, and the fact that they were there to counsel and to help people improve on their relationships.
Yes.
They left that to those individuals without counsel. And you had, we grew up seeing people, enter into relationships, people get pregnant, people leave church, and it was just a bit of a car crash in some cases, not in all cases, but in some cases. And that was down to there not being any counsel at the beginning. So singles counsel, single sessions where you talk about being single, you talk about what God's expectations of us as men and women, the call to singleness, whether that's for you, whether if you're called to singleness, you have no issue about it. You are not wedding sick, you are not relationship sick. You are happy being single. When you're called to that, there is no burden to it.
Yeah.
God gives you something, he adds no burden to it. So if he gives you that gift of singleness, there is no burden. You don't feel that you should be married, you're happy. And so, that's one of the things to determine, whether or not it's for you. And also, sometimes we don't want to ask God that question. Am I to be married? Will I be married, Lord?
Wow. Stop there for a minute. So, wow. I mean, you got a lot to say, but the point that you've just made there, you're saying that sometimes we don't even want to ask God the question. Is that because we're frightened of what the answer might be?
Yeah. Because what we hear, what we see in the Word of God is that we see examples of people not being married. We see examples of eunuchs, that the whole text about that. We see examples of people being married. We see the primary example of Adam and Eve being the first couple in the Bible. And we also read that God blesses marriage. He advocates for it. He blesses it. So we know that marriage is a good thing. But we also see that some people don't get married. Some people are called to singleness. Some people, like Paul, is like, I'm okay with that. I wish that everybody was single.
Yeah.
We see people not being married, and we don't know why. So what we want is every woman wants, and every chap that desires to be married wants that in their future. But then what we find out sometimes is we're scared to ask God if it is in our future, especially after a number of years have gone past.
Yes.
My people are always saying to me, when are you getting married? When are you getting married? And I'm like, when God finds me a husband, I'll be married. The reality is that I'm joking, but what I'm saying is that when it's not because I haven't dated, it's not because and dating is another issue, another thing that obviously you're going to talk about at some point.
Yeah.
When I was growing up, people didn't know whether or not dating was a good or bad thing. People heard people were in relationships, and then the leadership was, well, you better get married in 6 months because we don't want you to be in the group that have children outside of wedlock. Yeah. The reality is you could have had children the first night.
Yeah.
So I don't, that's not a prerequisite as into to get married after 6 months. 6 months was a date that they gave. But the reality is what they should have been saying is these are going to be guidelines for dating. You need to make sure that you have those guidelines in place so that you can date well. And by doing that, dating is a fact-finding experience. Yeah? Fact-finding.
I like that.
Dating is about finding out, and this is where, our American sort of black church predecessors did a little better than us, because what they did was they gave parameters and they gave boundaries for dating. So young people could date. So they understood what it meant, what dating meant, and what the boundaries were, so that they could understand romantic relationship or a befriending relationship that would lead on to marriage. When you don't have an experience of dating, you don't know what to expect, you know, and you can make some really bad judgments in that situation. So really, when you are looking to be married at some point, you need to understand how to date, and you need to date well. And
Okay, so all right, so I'm single. A young man's knocking on my door, and he's handsome. I'm being drawn to him. What does the next few weeks look like for me? The next few months, even.
Well, there's things to just establish. Do you have you in your church? Have you been to any single or any dating groups? Is there an environment where you can sit and have a discussion about what it means to date?
Oh, fantastic.
You know, because you would not go into a lion's den without a gatekeeper or lion, a zookeeper, because you'd be setting yourself up to be killed, basically, to be eaten, because you need to make sure you are more than aware of what the dangers are, what the boundaries are, what your who you are in this relationship, because you want to maintain your integrity. You want to maintain your self-respect. You want to maintain, because at the end of the day, you are God's daughter. You are a child of God. He's your God. You're his daughter. And God, if you have a child, you want to make sure that child is respected and not taken for granted. You want to make sure that that person treats your daughter well, your son well. So if that's the case, you need to know your worth before somebody tells you your worth.
Wow, that's good. You need to know your worth before someone tells you your worth.
Somebody tells you your worth. Because if you don't know what your value is, somebody can devalue you and you'll believe it. Somebody can tell you that you're worth very little, or you're not worth enough, and basically, press all your buttons, and you think that you are in a really good relationship. Whereas when somebody else from a perspective looks at it, they'll be like, no, you're not being treated well here. Do you know what I mean? So first of all, you need to make sure that you have a healthy understanding and a biblical understanding as to what God expects from you and what is good dating practice.
Okay, so let's say, for instance, as a child, I was abused, whether it's physical, emotional, etc., or even sexual. And so I have this desire to have a relationship, because I've not really had a relationship, and I feel that this relationship is going to, like you said earlier on, complete me. What does that can create a lot of issues, because then you mentioned deficit earlier on, and abuse and situations and circumstances in the past can bring you into a deficit place. So then you're expecting someone. So in terms of how do we go about knowing whether we have a deficit?
I think you have to know yourself. So we're coming from different life perspectives, different life journeys. If you have been in a relationship where it's been abusive, or you've been sexually molested, or you've had trauma in your life around relationships, you have to get that sorted. You have to see somebody. You have to get counseling, because you take that into any relationship that you go into. You're going to take that. And it's about being whole. If you are not whole and you have a deficit, you are going to want that deficit to be met by somebody else. And it's not that person's responsibility to meet your deficit. It is your responsibility to make sure that you are whole before you go into a relationship. So I would advise somebody to get counseling. And that's another thing, when you can have honest dialogue, within your ministry, with your leadership, then the leadership can provide that level of support. And if you don't have it within your church, you have Christian counselors.
Yeah.
In my church, we have Christian counselors. So we have relationship counseling, we have single counseling. So these are things that you should be in anyway. You should go to find out where you can get support, but also where you can be educated. You can never know enough. And what is always going to be demonstrated when you're in it.
Say that again, Paula.
You can never know enough, and what needs to be demonstrated when you're in it.
Yes,
so don't wait for you to be in it to be able to know anything, because then you're just reacting. You're reacting, you're self-preservating, you're protecting, you're not actually with wisdom and understanding, going through that situation with what you're reacting in a situation that may not have any wisdom to it, or you may not have any answers, because you don't know what you're dealing with, and you don't understand yourself. So therefore you can be open to abuse if you don't know your worth. Yeah. So it's really important that you get support and you get help about that. And I find that when there's a general forum for people to talk, and just talk about relationships, or talk about the things that they feel that they don't understand, or clarity, there's always good support, because especially when you have different age groups as well. People have, you have older people, that are willing to be honest and open. I remember growing up and thinking that the older people in our church, they, you realize they had a life.
Yeah.
After they died.
Yeah.
Because they had 4 children, and then after they passed away when they're very old, there were 12 people turned up, 12 children turned up at the funeral. Because the assumption that they gave was that the moment they became a Christian, their previous life had no reflection on who they were now.
Yeah.
And that's not true. When you've lived life, you have a lot to share. You didn't just, when you became a Christian, yes, all things are passed away, but your knowledge of what it means to be married, or what it means to have gone through a really bad relationship, lose a child, you still have those emotional experiences that you can share, and that you bring into your walk with God, because you can then share about how God took you through that.
Yeah, that's right.
And how you're now on the side of that, So I think it's a really good opportunity to share in a safe environment where people know that whatever's said, it stays there, and people feel that they can share about the things in their lives that may have hindered, or may be still hindering, their movement forward in terms of a relationship.
You're so right. I mean, one of the things that I've reiterated over the years is my vision for church being a safe place, being a place of family, being a place where we look out for one another. We have open dialogue and open discussion about our challenges, and getting to the point where we get mature enough to realize that sharing a challenging moment in your past is actually, number one, healthy for you in a healthy environment, but it's so also helpful and healthy for others to hear, because there's something quite powerful about us sharing our testimonies, sharing our challenges and our experience. I get asked all the time, Pastor, why are you so open on the pulpit about, you know, some of your challenges and some of your you know, the things that you go through? Why, you know, you should be protecting, you know, protecting the anointing and all that kind of stuff. And they normally, the people that come from that, tell me that, come from a different school of thought. I come from another school of thought that says, you know, I'm here to serve. And I think sometimes people need a point of reference in terms of how do they experience failure and move on from failure and get out, you know. And I would often share, you know, and I do that because I want people to feel comfortable in sharing some of their challenges that they've been through. But what better way to hear it from the pastor and start, you know, creating that kind of environment. And I think number one, it was really powerful for me, very relieving, very healing for me, but it was also a blessing to others after they shared it. After I shared it.
Yeah. I think sometimes it's all around, you know, the devil tells us that we are, you know, he condemns us. He makes us feel that, you know, we shouldn't share this. And that if we do, people are going to see us differently. They're not,
yeah.
You know, and then, you know, what you need to say to the devil in that sense is that everybody that God chose in the Bible, they had history, they had baggage.
Come on.
They had serious problems. Anybody that God called for a purpose, called to the nations, you know, they had issues.
Right.
You know? So, you know, that it means that you're in good company.
Yeah.
In absolutely brilliant company, because we've all sinned and we've all come short of the glory.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And, you know, all the more, you know, to have something that the people can connect with, that they can say, actually, you know what, when I talk to this lady or when I talk to this brother, you know, I know that if God took them through this, you know, God can take me through that. You know, that, you know, we are living testimonies for each other of God's greatness and God's power and God's ability to provide and to overcome and to bless abundantly and above. You know, when we share our lives with each other, you know, so it means that, you know, you can take me through a journey. You know, if I'm struggling, you can say, listen, this, you know, this is what you need to do. You know, you can encourage me, you can build me up, and you're legitimate. You're not just saying it because it's the right thing to say. You're actually credible because you've gone through it yourself. And so when I look at you, I'm thinking, this person has gone through the same thing I've gone through. They're on the other side of it. It means that God has there's a saying that God has no grandchildren. He has no bias. So which means that if he did it for you, he'll do it for me.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so you can stand on the same word of God that person stood on and expect God to deliver the same way he delivered for that person.
Yeah. Let's talk about virginity and celibacy. Okay. Virginity and celibacy as a single person. Because it's easy to say, okay, you know, I'm a Christian, I want to be faithful to God, and I don't believe in sex before marriage, and maybe I was in a relationship before, and, you know, I've maybe had other relationships in the past. Now I've come to Christ, my relationships are behind me. And so I know what it is to have, you know, whether was it a serious relationship or a social relationship and so on. So the challenge that we face today in terms of people feeling pressured to, you know, to not be virgins, because, you know, everything in the world is, you know, just pointing about it's okay to have sexual relations outside marriage. We know for the world that's okay, and to get that message across within the church, how do we deal with that?
Okay. I would say, first of all, we have to understand, and we have to love what God says about why he says it. Do you know what I mean? We have to understand why he says it. And I remember when I was a young girl, it just made sense to me. When we talked about marriage, I always said to my mom, and it wasn't until she corrected me, I said, well, when I get married, I'm going to live with my husband first. It makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Live with him, find out what he's about, and then I'll get married, because then I'll know.
You're right.
Then my mom says, you cannot do that.
I can imagine Sister Girlie saying that.
He said, Paulette, you cannot do that. But that's to do with environment. So my environment, and growing up in school, my environment would tell me that's logical, because that's what the world does. Why wouldn't you test something out before you buy something? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas God was what was God saying that, and it's echoed in the Bible when it came to the way the Jews would look at prospective marriages, is that they would have a matchmaker. So they would have two families would come together, they would talk, and the matchmaker would choose the right family for the right children.
Right.
So it's very formal, and the children would have no recourse. They wouldn't be able to say, sorry, I don't like that person. It's the way they did things. And they would ensure that the girl, like Mary and Joseph, was a virgin.
Right.
And so it was important, because God's way of dealing with sexual comparison is virginity. Because when you're a virgin and you only have one partner, that's the only person that you've ever slept with and ever likely to sleep with in God's eye. One will become the two will become one flesh, and and that's his plan. What Satan does, he perverts that, and therefore what he then starts to disseminate is the fact that it's okay. Why wouldn't you want to try different people, go out with different men, so that you are comfortable, you're knowledgeable, and so you're more confident, as it were, when you get married. But the reality is that God wants you to have all that exploration with the one person that you're going to spend the rest of your life with, which means there is no comparison with anybody else.
Wow.
There is no comparison. Whereas when you're married, when you have a number of partners, there is a chance of comparison. You will compare various different sexual partners, and for some people, they will base those thoughts and be dissatisfied with their relationship based on other previous relationships. That can be an issue. But when we come to God, and that's why when we come to God, and having not been, when you're new in Christ, it's as if everything's been washed clean, and you are a virgin once again. When you come to Christ, the Bible says all things are passed away, and all things become new. So as far as God's concerned, you're starting again, and he doesn't hold any of those things against you, because they're all passed away. And so, but you begin that journey now as a person, as a woman or a young man who will lose their virginity, as it were, when they get married. Figuratively speaking, not physically speaking. So it is a requirement that God has, and he has a reason for that requirement. Now the reality is that we know this, and life happens. We know this, and people make mistakes. We know this, and we have a forgiving God. We know this, And, but there should not be a presumption that because God forgives and because God is a good father, that we are going to knowingly go into this, knowing that he's going to forgive us.
Right.
If we fall short and we are, and we make mistakes, that mistake has consequences, and that alone is something that we will have to go through with God's grace and with God assisting us. But we will have to go through that if there is a child at the end of that, or if there are other issues that come out of that mistake.
Yes.
There is therefore no condemnation. If you've done wrong, if something's happened, you made a mistake, God is faithful; He will forgive you.
Yes.
Yes. You shouldn't allow the devil to bring your past before you and think that God will never forgive you for that kind of those kind of sins, because that's a lie from the pit of hell.
Absolutely.
I knew a friend of mine, and when she first came to the Lord, she was a prostitute, and her main issue was that it was so hard for her to think that God would forgive her, of the lifestyle that she had before.
Right.
So hard, and she took a very long time before she actually would receive God's forgiveness. We told her that we showed her in the word that God was faithful. He's a kind father, and all things are passed away. But because she had those memories, and because she had those soul ties as part of her life, it took a little while. It took some deliverance, in her life. But then she was delivered from those soul ties, right. And then she was able to see herself the way God saw her. That he was his child, and he loved her, and that she had an opportunity to start again in her life, to reset that button, start again, and she was accepting in his sight. And sorry
to interrupt. Go ahead.
Yeah, so there was a while, she was single for a little while because at that time she wasn't ready. She had to go through counselling, emotional, psychological, and then she came to a point where she was ready to meet somebody. She got married, and she now has, how many kids she's got? 5 kids now. They're all big people now, but yeah.
Just quickly talk about the soul tie, and then we'll go on to celibacy.
Right. Okay. So the Bible talks about we've actually coined the phrase soul ties.
Yes.
Because the Bible talks about the two coming together and becoming one flesh. We know that we are soul, spirit, and body.
Right.
Yeah? And that union that God has is not just a physical thing. Some people try to detach the sexual act from and keep it very, very separate. But that is a spiritual communion. That's a contract. That's a communion with one person, with 2 people coming together, and it's a tie. It's emotional. Anything that comes from the seat of our emotional it comes from our soul. Right. In our soul lies our emotional state, lies our intellectual state. That is the realm of the soul. And so when 2 people come together, those emotions are tied. Back in the Bible days, they didn't have a service back in the days we know as a marriage service. The Bible talks about this person laid with this person and they were married.
Yes.
As far as the Bible is concerned, the moment you slept with that person became your wife, yeah, or your husband.
Wow.
And so therefore, as far as God was concerned, the 2 became flesh. That was it, yeah. And so when sin came into the world, and when Adam sinned, and then sin came into the world, and all kinds of perverseness, all kinds of illicit coming together, relationships, fornication, all of that increase the nature of sexual sin to the degree whereby it had repercussions, basically. So when you're tied to somebody, you're not meant to be tied to that person. You have to untie them. So because you're attached by your emotions, You know, when a woman gives herself to somebody, it's not just a physical thing, it's a soul thing. She gives her heart, she gives her emotions. You know, hands up, women. Hello.
Yeah.
You know, when we're emotionally connected, I don't see no hands up. It's just me.
Absolutely.
You know, when you're emotionally connected to somebody, you know, and the act of loving somebody and falling in love, you become connected to that emotionally to that person. And so you're becoming tied to that person. The moment you sleep with that person, that's it. A man can detach himself very, very easily, you know, because for him it's a physical act. It's only when that man falls in love with that woman that it becomes a soul and an emotional connection with that woman. Previous to that, he doesn't have to be emotionally connected to her. Whereas a woman, no matter what she says, she is emotionally connected to that person that she sleeps with. You know? And so that's why sleeping with so many people or having relationships outside of the context of marriage connects you emotionally to so many different people.
Yeah.
I remember we had I was working in a hostel, and they the sexual health clinic sent us some information for the young boys. It was a boys' hostel, and they had had an increase of sexually transmitted disease in that locality, and so they're sending like posters out to all the hostels, you know, because the sexual health clinic were being flooded with people, because you know people weren't being responsible, they weren't having protection, and so there was a lot of sexual transmitted diseases that were you know numbers were being increased. So right. I was quite interested in the poster, because what it had two people. I don't know if anybody remembers seeing these posters, but it had two people, and then faded in the background you had a string of men behind the women behind the men, and men behind the women. So what it showed you in bold, you had these two people, and if you looked at it, it just looked like two people. But when you stood away from it, you saw hundreds of people behind men behind the women, and hundreds of women behind the men. And what it was basically saying is that you may see this one person that you're sleeping with, but that one person has slept with all these different people, you know, and so, you know, without protection. So it was basically, you know, giving that advice, saying use protection in that context. But it's the same imagery when it comes to soul tie. You know, you can be, if you slept with a number of people, then those are the souls that have been connected to you emotionally, you know, and still have a portion of your heart in some way or another. Which is why when people see their exes and there's unfinished business, there's still an issue there.
Wow.
They haven't seen them for years, but yet still, the moment they see them, those emotions come back. Why do those emotions come back? Because they're now connected to that person. They're still connected to that person. So that's why we need to have, you know, we need to know ourselves. We need to have, we need to pray. We need to have deliverance, because there are things we just need to get out of our system.
Yeah.
Out, you know, and know that we're okay.
Yeah.
You know.
Let's talk about celibacy, and then we'll start with the questions.
Okay. So celibacy is the decision, the intentionality and the decision to remain sexually inactive until you get married, or sexually inactive, full stop. You know, so if you are from the camp where you are single out of call or choice, there is no issue with celibacy. Celibacy is what you know is part and parcel of your choice and your walk with the Lord, being single. If you're single out of circumstances, then celibacy is more difficult, because your emotions and your heart is saying, I want to be married. If you're dating Again, that's why you have to have those agreed boundaries in a dating relationship, and you have to have accountability to someone, so you have your girlfriend, it's like, so I'll tell you a story. I went on a date with this guy, and I said to my it's quite funny. I said to my sister, two friends, and my sister and another friend of mine. I said to her, if it doesn't go well, I'm going to call you. When you're like, I don't want to waste your time, and I don't need to waste my time. So you have a discrete backup plan. So I went with this guy, and so I don't think the picture that he showed me that he looked like wasn't the picture, that it wasn't that at all. So I arrived, and it was like, I'm waiting for this person to look a particular way, and this gentleman arrives, and it wasn't the way. So anyway, I'm like, and you know me, if you know me well, I can't hide this. So I'm like, so the picture had hair, you don't have hair. Okay. So my face was like, hi. How are you? Oh dear. As it was. I'm a chatterbox anyway, so I'll talk to anybody. So I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to be one of those people that's just going to escape. Although I did have a backup plan. Yeah. But I thought I'll sit down, we'll have a chat. And we had a chat, but in that chat, again, for me, in that chat, because sometimes you can see somebody and you can make an assumption, you can make a judgment. Mm-hmm. And this is when sometimes God challenges us on what we say we're looking for. Right. And for some people, they've said, I'd made a list. I said to the Lord, he needs to be this, he needs to be that. And I got exactly what I wanted. And for some people, that was like, yeah, it worked for them. For others, they were like quite surprised, actually, because he wasn't the kind of person I would normally be looking for. He wasn't my normal type, and he wasn't, but there was something about him, and so sometimes God will challenge us. And I remember God challenged me, and he said, if I gave you something that was beautiful and I made specially for you, and I put it in a wrapping paper that you didn't like, and you didn't, because of the wrapping paper, you did not accept the present, you'd be missing out on something that was perfect for you. Yeah. But part of the investigation is to unwrap the wrapping paper to see what's inside. Right. Which is why I say dating is fact-finding. It's finding out as much as you can about that person, because you could be wrong by what you assume you think you like. Yeah, very good. So yes, so so I'm just trying to think of that's the moral of that story is that celibacy. We could talk about celibacy. So within the framework of dating is really, really important. If you are dating, it means that those challenges of staying celibate is in there, and therefore you have to have those parameters, you have to have those boundaries. So, and you have to agree them. So if you're dating somebody, you want to date them, you want to get to, it's a mutual thing, you're moving forward. Part of those discussions are, we need to talk about what our boundaries are. And I need to tell you what I'm comfortable and not comfortable with. That's good. You have to tell me what you're comfortable and not comfortable with. That's good, yeah. In the context, and we're not talking about what our personal preferences are outside of the Word of God. We're using the Word of God as part of that preference, and part of those foundations. Because when we don't share the same values, it's not going to be sustainable. We don't share the same values, and that's what fact finding is about, just to see whether or not you share the same values, and that you are Christians, and I know that's a major thing right now, is that are there enough Christians in the church for women that are looking to get married? People that are non-Christians, they're good people, and hopefully if you're talking to somebody and they're not a Christian, they could come to Christ, and then you'll be able to marry them. So that does not always work. That doesn't always work. There are some circumstances where it does. I'm not saying that it doesn't, because I've seen it work. But if you're going on the premise that that is what you're going to do, it is not going to work out for you. Because you cannot make someone love God. You cannot make somebody love God. No matter how much you love them, you can make them love God. And part and parcel of a relationship being one that God has set up is that he says, you're not to be unequally yoked with an unbeliever. And there's a reason for that. It means, and it basically means you're not going to be on the same pages. What you want to do in God is not what he's going to want. And and reality, what happened, like Solomon, his wives drove him away from God.
Yeah.
Solomon, the wisest man that ever lived, nobody ever lived after him. And he was the wisest man before anybody else. He allowed women to turn him away from God and drive him to idolatry. And so when you don't share the most fundamental and the most important things, which is God, somebody who is not a Christian has, and that's what Satan can use them. And that's the whole point. Satan can manipulate them to draw you away from God. Because you love them, you will go. If you don't have your own convictions, if you're not steadfast, if you cannot make that decision to say, actually, you know what, I can't do this because I want to serve God, and God is more important to me. And you have to. There's some times in your life, for a few of us, that you have to make that decision. And it's a hard one. And that's why it's easy to make that known from the beginning.
Yeah.
To be able to try and factor that in 6 months into a relationship.
Yeah.
You are going to find that extremely difficult. Extremely difficult.
That's brilliant.
So celibacy is something that you constantly have to always be honest about. You've got to have people that you check in with, that will check in with you, and people that you trust, and because everybody knows who they are and what if they're placed in a situation where they are vulnerable, you just don't go there.
Yeah.
You just don't go there. Sometimes you think, well, it's something that we should tell younger people because, they don't have those parameters and their hormones are raging and da-da-da-da-da. But you know what? Women that are 40, 50, 60, their hormones rage too. And the statistic shows, not just in Christian environment, but statistics shows that there was a surge in women over 50 contracting HIV and sexual and transmitted diseases. Because they thought that because they were over a certain age and they weren't going to get pregnant, that they could have, they could have sex with whoever, and they wouldn't contract any sexual transmitted diseases. And that's not what happened. So, yourself, and basically when you are in a situation where you are dating, you have to have those agreed boundaries in place, and you have to have people that you can be held to accountability for.
So, first question. How can someone desire a relationship, puts Jesus first and does everything that God has called them to do, desires a relationship with a man or a woman, and God doesn't, and it doesn't happen? How can someone desire a relationship, put Jesus first, do everything that they're called to do, and God still doesn't bless them with a relationship?
Okay, so that goes back to asking God, having that question, because sometimes if we're open with God, we will ask God the questions we don't want to ask, and we will be ready to hear an answer, any answer, whether it's something we want to hear or not. Because the Bible says it's a good desire, and for me, that kind of speaks to my life, whereby I have dated, and I've not found the right person. And when I say right person, it's because having fact-finded, having been challenged by God in different ways in terms of the person I'm looking for, or just to find the person He would have for me. That speaks to me definitely. And I think what I can say about that is that being married is not the be all and end all.
Right.
You have, what you have to look in your life and say, what are the things in my life that I'm grateful to God for? Because like I said, you'll speak to somebody who's married and they will say, I wish I wasn't married. I wish I was single. Because there's a different expectation on your life when that happens. So Paul said that he would rather people single like himself, and that the focus is to God. So when you are single, you have more opportunity, you have more time. You can do things that married couples dream about doing and never get a chance to do. Right. But you have to look at it in a different way, because if you look at something just being the be all and end all, you'll never be satisfied and you'll never be happy with what you have and what you're blessed with. Mm-hmm. And I think that we've got to say to ourselves, whether I marry or not, and God knows my intention is to marry, I'm going to live a full life to the glory of God. Yeah. And we all have, for some people, they're married, they don't have any children. They want children, they don't have children. The people that are married and they're married for a short period of time, their spouse passed away or they got divorced. No situation is perfect. No situation is perfect. And I kind of feel towards like the end of days that we're living in. These are sometimes may well be some of the issues that we're bearing based on the end times that we're living in. I'm not saying that's the same for everybody. But there's a cost and there's a sacrifice and there's a burden that we all go through in some way or another. But my answer to that would be to inquire of the Lord, because when God gives you an answer, then it's settled in your spirit. Mm. You know what I mean? It's settled in your spirit because He gave it to you, not because somebody said something or somebody said, this is what the Bible says, or you're not eligible, or you're not doing something right. It doesn't come from a person, it comes from God. What is God saying to you about this?
Mm-hmm. Excellent. That's fantastic. So how will God tell us whether He desires us to be has a specific person for us to be married or to be single? How will we know that?
Okay, so it goes back to, if you are to be single and you do not want to be married, you will know.
Okay. Yeah.
You know, because God's not going to wrestle you to the ground to say you will be single whether you like it or not.
Right.
Because He said marriage is a good thing. He's ordained marriage. So He's not going to, with one hand, say it's a good thing and say, all you over there, you can't have it.
Right.
What happens is that you then have to decide on whether or not you are, if you want to be married, then you're going about it the right way.
Right.
That you are using your time to be the right person. You're bringing something to the table when you are, when you're preparing for marriage. Right. It's when Esther was being prepared to go before the king. She spent a year in the harem, a year with spices being poured on her in preparation. She spent a whole year preparing. So, you know, if you decide to be married, you have to prepare yourself. You have to know what it means. That's what I'm saying. Talk to people that are married, that have good marriages. You know, talk to them about what that looks like. You know, they'll tell you about the mistakes they've made, and they've told you what works. You know, it talks about, you go to Proverbs 31. It talks about the wife, being, some people are saying that's superwoman in Proverbs, but it's God's equivalent of a good wife. The Proverbs 31 wife, and you look at that and you see whether or not you have those qualities, you develop those qualities, because those are the kind of qualities that you need to have when no one's looking.
Yes. Yeah.
Very good. You're not doing it to be seen. You're doing it because those are the qualities are important, and you're doing your best to strive for them.
That's really good. I mean, one of the things that comes up in our men's group, not recently but over the years, is the desire to get married but struggling to remain celibate. And I would often say to the men that marriage wasn't an answer to the frustration of sexual frustration. And I would say, because what happens is when you get into a relationship, you get into a marriage, and you don't have those disciplines of control, you can easily go outside and sleep around and get it elsewhere. And I was saying to them that it's really, really important to be able to develop those disciplines of celibacy before you get married, so that when you go into it, because we started talking about things like when women have children, sometimes what happens is their hormones get thrown up all over the place, and they don't settle. It could take months to settle down. It could take years, a year or two to settle down, and which that time your wife is not doesn't want to be sexually active. So I says, what are you going to do then? What are you going to do in that year, those 2 years where your wife just doesn't want to be touched? And it's not because she doesn't love you. It's just that her body is saying this is foreign. And sometimes what happens is the body needs to get back into position in order for the woman to feel normal again. And that's nature, isn't it? That's natural.
Absolutely. And I think that that when you're talking about, there are things, there are ways of establishing good control in the Word of God. So self-control is one of those. Is one of the things that you mentioned.
Okay.
The Bible talks about it being really, really important, because you have to have that ability, and it's not just when it comes to sexual things. If you might like chocolate, I love chocolate, and you can have chocolate in the house, and if every time there's chocolate in the house, you will eat that chocolate, and you will say, I was trying to be really, really good. That tells you that you have no self-control when it comes to chocolate.
Right.
Very, very small thing. But the reality is that if you have no sense of or no self-control, it means that you will always be compromised.
Yeah, very good, very good.
Compromised.
That's an incredible point.
And it's not the fact that it's not about words. It's not about you saying, "Oh, I'm never going to do that." You've never proven that you have the self-will not to. You can't say, yeah, you know what, that chocolate has been in the fridge for a year now, or maybe that's a bit too long, but a month now, and I've not touched it, because that is you actively demonstrating self-control, and that is the end result of that, is that chocolate stayed in that fridge for a month. And once that you can demonstrate that chocolate stayed in the fridge for a month, you can go to 2 months, or you can go to 3 months. because now it's no longer something that has a grasp on you, something that you can take it or leave it. You have developed a discipline to say no and stick to it. And that's some of the things that the Word of God talks about, having self-control as being one of the fruits of the Spirit. Because it's so that our flesh will derail us, given half the chance. You know, the enemy will manipulate our flesh, and our flesh will derail us when it comes to something really important, because we have not developed self-control. I remember when I was younger, I could go to London, I could go to like concerts and whatever. I could get 3 hours sleep, you know, and get up for work the next day, not feel it. And I could do that for years. Then something happened. Then I realised after some time, I couldn't do that anymore. I then, you know, because then I think, oh, I'm fine. Then I would think that I could get up, could not get up, because what happened is after at some time of not putting certain things in place, you know, so that I could actually do that. So what I should have been doing is like, now as your body gets older, you need more sleep. As you get older as well, you need sleep anyway. You can do it when you're young, but once you get older, you need more sleep. You know, you have to put certain guidelines and certain things in place. Where you can bounce back from that, you know, you might be doing something. You could be doing something much more important, much more valuable, and need to get up at a certain time. Right. Have responsibilities that people are depending on you for, and therefore you have to put things in place. So you put an alarm clock in. You put your alarm clock out at 6 o'clock. Yeah. In place so that you can still maintain a high level of competency.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, so, you know, we have to put those things in place in our lives so that we can still do what we need to do.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you for that. Not sure how relevant or how this question might drop in. It may be for another time, I'm not sure. It may be for another time, but I'll throw it out there anyway, just in case. Why have you decided to get married now, and what stopped you from getting married earlier?
Do they know something I don't?
Exactly. Yeah. So if we generalize that question.
Okay.
All right. If we generalize that question, and let's just hypothesize.
Yeah.
And say, here is a person. They've decided to get married now, later on in age.
Yeah.
They had an opportunity before, maybe they didn't have an opportunity before. Why are they deciding to get married now, and what stopped them from getting married earlier? I just want to throw that out there. Let's just hypothesize.
All right. It's never too late to be married. Okay. You know, there was like, I saw something on Facebook, and this 96-year-old lady got married.
Yeah. 96 years old.
Some people would say, why even bother? You know, you're 96. But it's down to the individual.
Yeah.
That she wanted to be married, and she found a companion at that time in their life. Then, you know, then lovely.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think there's any age. I think that if you sometimes I remember reading what's her name? Oh, the famous Christian author. And she got married. She did a singles conference. Can't remember now. Anyway, she used to do a single conference for years and years and years, doing different things, all about being single, happy being single, living a life of singleness. And then she got married in her 50s.
Wow.
And then she met somebody who she felt that at the time that she's now met him, it's the best time in her life.
Is it Cindy something? Cindy?
Yeah, Cindy something. Oh, I can't remember her surname.
Cindy,
Yeah.
Cindy.
Yeah. Yeah, her.
Yeah.
Trim.
Cindy Trim, that's right. Yeah.
Thank you, whoever that was.
Cindy
Yeah.
Trim.
Yeah. So yeah, sometimes to me, looking on that, I'm like, God save the best for last. Because when you have, when you've been faithful, and also, so it's sometimes when because you've got to also remember that God has purpose for marriage.
Ah, that's good. That's good.
God has purpose for marriage.
Very good.
He doesn't just have you just being married just for procreation, because we know that we missed that because sin allowed that to just go by the wayside when Adam and Eve sinned, because they're commissioned together as a couple was to replenish the earth. That was the commandment given by the Lord, by God. So in the way that God sees you, because you are born with purpose as a single person, your marriage must have purpose, and your marriage must be your first ministry, because that is where you hone your skills and your development as two becoming one, and God has a call on your life through your marriage, not just as individuals with an individual assignment. When you're married, your assignment, you share assignment, and so that's the other thing, is that sometimes God will place people together because of the assignment over their lives.
Yeah.
Married couple, because one would not be as effective without the other. So he's assigned people together in terms of ministry, because in his eyes, the two becoming one, that's their assignment. That's his assignment for them. So it's not just about marriage and the emotional and the benefits in that way. It's what God's designed for it. What is our purpose as a couple, as a married couple? What does God want us to do? Do we have an assignment? Have we even talked about that as to what God wants us to do as a married couple? As supporting your ministry and you supporting mine. If you share ministries, if God's called you to do different things, how are you supporting one another? That's something that you have to give to God as well, because God is about design and purpose.
That's fantastic. That is fantastic. I like that whole idea of purpose within the marriage. Is not just two people coming together for the sake of it, not under the guise of God. God has a specific agenda for that marriage, and I think it's really important that if you do meet a prospective husband or wife, you would do good to find out or talk about at least what do you think is our purpose together.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is what I'm saying about having really good counsel and good and dating a relationship prior to marriage, being that fact-finding path to begin with a view to then finding out where the comparisons are, where the values lie, where the faith element lies, where you talk about where you stand in your marriage together. So some people, when they're getting counselling, they've never talked about, they're ready for marriage and they've never talked about who takes the lead in a decision in the household, who has the final say, and then that becomes an issue when they're married, because then they didn't talk about who is going to, we can state our point, but who's going to make that final decision. Talk about how you're going to develop your children, how are you going to parent,
are you going to have children or not, are you going to buy a house or are you going to rent?
Those questions, all of those things are important, because what you find when you counsel people, married people, and you counsel people when it hits the fan, is that those discussions never happened. They never happened, because they didn't think that they thought they were on the same page. How many times have I heard that? Thought we were on the same page. Thought you understood, thought you knew what I meant about that when I said that. It's not clear. So sometimes I think, is it being childish to be absolutely clear? No, it's important to be absolutely clear.
Yeah.
And it's part of that level of communication. It's like, I don't like chocolate. All right, so what I'm hearing you say is you don't like chocolate. Yes. You know what I mean? Nobody
black chocolate. I don't like black chocolate. Milk chocolate, yes. Black chocolate, no. Read my lips. Black.
I have learned to like black chocolate. No sugar. So,
oh, dear.
you know what I mean? So it's kind of like it's that level of communication. It's not patronizing. It's actually being able to say. When anybody goes away from that conversation, they can never not say you weren't clear.
Right. Yeah. Fantastic. Fantastic. I mean, you kind of covered the next question. Really, it was saying kind of what are the main qualities that you're looking for in a man, or etc. But I think there's a difference between preferences and qualities. Would you say qualities come before preferences, or are they equally as important?
I would say character,
okay,
and qualities are important. Preferences, you can take it or leave it, because if you had somebody, and it goes back to the wrapping paper and the precious gift inside, you were used to a particular look, and actually you were challenged because this person doesn't come in the same packaging that you're normally used to.
Right. So
ordinarily you might reject that person, but after close inspection and thinking about what is it important to you in a relationship. So if you can, that if honesty is important to you, kindness, consideration, integrity, whatever it is, what are the non-negotiables?
Very good. Very good.
Non-negotiable. So you have to have some non-negotiables, which means that your life would be, you would not be happy if you didn't have those qualities or those characters in a relationship. For you, every woman is different. Every other woman is different. There's a book called The 5 Love Languages. I don't know if anybody's read it.
Yeah.
And it talks about how different women like to be. What kind of woman are you? Are you a woman that loves getting gifts, words of affirmation? So it's gifts, words of affirmation, service. Service, yeah. Service. Oh, so I remember them now. Gifts, words of affirmation, service.
Touch. Yeah.
What that was.
Helen.
And one more. Touch, words of affirmation, gifts, service. There's one more.
I remember the last one.
So they're categorized. Yeah. So I know, and this goes for all relationship. My mum she loves service. So she loves when you do something for her.
Yeah.
Do something for her. So she would rather if you came into the house and you saw that the house needed cleaning, if you clean the house or clean something in the kitchen, she'd be ever grateful, rather than you giving her a box of chocolate or something for the kitchen. That's her language of love. When you love my mom, you do something that she could possibly do but doesn't have the time to. If you do that for her, then that shows her that you love her.
Right.
So for somebody else, it could be a combination of two. It could be service, but it could be words. It could be kind words of affirmation. So you have to know for yourself what the things that are important for you, and you have to share them, because people are not psychic. You know, psychic is not something that we affirm. Words of knowledge.
Yeah.
Words of knowledge, yes. But you know, when you're communicating, that's what comes down to communication. When you know, I'm the kind of person, I like gifts.
Yes.
I like, you know,
Quality
I like
time. Quality time.
And that's it, quality time. Yeah.
Quality time.
So I like gifts, quality time.
Mm.
Yeah. So you have to know which one of those things are important to you, and you have to state that, you know. So in that communication, as in what things are important, what are the non-negotiables, you have to talk about that, because then that person knows, yeah, going forward, the things that you know, you don't have to say, well, you never do this for me, or you never do that for me, because they know what you like.
Yeah.
They know the things that make you happy. You're happy to share those things.
So knowing your love language is important. I mean, when I discovered Helen's love language, I thought it was it's because she just wanted me to take the bin out. Yeah. I'll make her a cup of tea. But in actual fact, I couldn't actually believe that doing things like taking the bin out, making her a cup of tea, asking her, you know, that is her love language.
Right, absolutely.
So I had to try and break all the habits of forgetting to take the bin out, or making myself a cup of tea and forgetting she need a cup of tea too.
Right. So because the Bible says you're affectionate to one another. When you're married, when you're single, your affection is to God. So all the pleasing is to God. You please.
Yeah, very good.
Makes him happy. When you're married, you're doing the things to make each other. That's what married couples forget, is that it's about pleasing each other. When you're pleasing each other, there's a couple that I know, they try and outdo each other. They try and like outdo how much one will do for the other. Right. It's always a competition, you know. But what it does, it speaks that they know each other so well that they're constantly pleasing each other. And when you're doing that, you're getting the balance right. You're getting the balance right, and it's because of love why you're doing that. And if truth be known, it's because of peace as well.
Yeah. Amen.
Right. Can I ask my question now?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. I was thinking. I've heard some people say they missed an opportunity. As Sister Williams was saying about you're praying because some people talk about meeting the perfect one, or that one was sent by God for them. As you get to know somebody, do you think there are people who may have missed an opportunity and thereafter it did not come, or they end up settling for something that may not necessarily have been God's choice for them?
I think that's happened. I think that sometimes we're not always in the place, and you know, they say you know, hindsight is 20/20, isn't it? You can look back and have perfect vision when you're looking back at the past.
Yeah, being too choosy or too fussy.
Right. You know, and it's been said of me too. You know, when I remember my mum saying to me, "Oh, yeah, I think you're a bit," and my sister, "I think you're a bit fussy." But I think, you know, on reflection of that, I know, you know, the things that you can't live with. You know the things, you know yourself, basically, you know yourself. And I think that sometimes when we are picky, that's when God challenged me about the whole wrapping paper thing. You know, that, you know, are you going to reject something because it doesn't look how you normally see it? You know, and sometimes we have to just readdress some of the things that, you know, if that's been said of us, you know, on a regular basis. Maybe you're picky, nobody's perfect. It's the whole 80-20 situation, you know, nobody's ever 100%, and that's true. Then you have to check yourself. You have to say, you know, am I missing something that I would have had, and because of you know, me being overly picky, I missed it. The only answer to that would be if you were in a fact-finding situation in that relationship, and you, at the point of looking at it, you didn't see there being a future, you know, because sometimes people will say that because you're getting old, you know, you should just settle, you know, but that speaks of me, to me, that speaks of desperation. That speaks of not actually enjoying your life as it is at the moment. And that's why I said, when you're single, you have to enjoy your life, because it's the one that you've got on this earth, you know, before you go to the next. You know, you can't have one element that because it's not happening, your life is ruined. You know, that's not how you should be thinking. You should be thinking, Lord, you know, I've been given these opportunities and this blessing in my life. I'm going to be grateful for everything you send my way. You know my heart's desire. You know I want to be married, you know, but I'm looking to you because the word says, in all thy ways acknowledge you. I'm acknowledging that. And and tell me what I'm not doing. Tell me what I'm not doing. So, like, you know, Esther came in the presence of the king, you know, when she wanted to speak to the king, you know. So for me, at times I've said, look, you know, right, no one's going to knock up to my door and say, I'm your husband. So am I where I can be seen? Am I where I can be seen? Because the Bible says that he that findeth a wife findeth the good things, which means that a man is looking. Am I where, you know, am I being seen? You know, and that's not necessarily to go out to places and just, you know, because I'm looking for a man. Am I, you know, in my circle of people, have I got a good enough circle of people, of friends that I know? You know, if I'm at home going from work to home, I'm never going to meet anybody, let alone meet the right person. You know, so, you know, you have to, you know, sometimes you have to you're challenged to widen your circle of people, of friends and people that you know. You know, the technology of the day that we're living in now, you know, people don't just meet people now in the ways that they used to.
Right.
You know, I remember growing up in church and running around like the romance post girl, giving notes to all kinds of people.
Yeah.
At convention, as people were being hooked up at convention. Because ordinarily, you know, convention was a time where people would see other people from different churches across the country. You know, I remember hearing a pastor saying, you know, it's a pastor's responsibility to make sure that if he has young women or young men in their church and they want to be married, that he encourages and expands the circle that his people move in, because it's in his best interest to, you know, as a father of the house, to make sure that, you know, people want to be married, that he's giving them the support and fathership in terms of you know, in what's the word I'm looking for, broadening their circle.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Yeah. So, you know, it can be times like that you think, because I've waited a long time, Lord, did I miss something? And, you know, you could think that God knows everything and no good thing will he withhold from them that walk uprightly. So if it was a good thing, surely God wouldn't have withheld that from me, you know, if it's a good thing, and would have pointed me in the right direction. So I think sometimes you can look back, think, oh Lord, that could have been definitely something that I missed. I don't want to miss anything else that you have for me. I need to make sure I'm where I should be, and in the circle, you know, incorporating my circle in a way that helps me to be seen. So I think people have in the past maybe felt that they've missed an opportunity. In the real scheme of things, God knows why, you know, and then, you know, that's something that we have to say to God, Lord, did I miss something because I'm still single? And God's not, he's not going to say, he's going to tell you. If you miss something, he's not going to hide that from you. He's going to tell you if you missed something, or if you messed up, or I had that person for you. He's going to tell you that. He's not going to withhold any good thing or information from you when he knows that can do you good.
Paulette, thank you so much for sharing your time with us tonight. We have been absolutely blessed and really appreciate you.